You don't have a concise formulation about who you are, what you do, and what you need, then you've already lost.
Attention's never been harder to get, and standing out has never been more important.
We want to see every word that's projected to essentially come out of your mouth.
Pitching and storytelling is so undervalued by a lot of founders.
We say that there shouldn't be extra information on your deck that you're not speaking to, because someone's reading that and they're distracted and they're not listening to you communicate the business.
You can be a good communicator, but public presentation, right, and pitching is a whole nother thing.
We force them to write out an actual pitch script.
Just videotape yourself pitch.
Then it doesn't matter how much you're going to pay us, we're not going to be a fit to work together.
You've got to hook me with a story.
I'm not in that line of business to steal what you're doing.
Hey everyone, Spencer Jones here, founder at Exo MedTech. Welcome to today's episode of the Exo MedTech Innovation Podcast. I'm very, very excited today. We have something a little bit different. We've had on some surgeons in the past. We've had on some quality people, some engineers. But today we have someone that I think may be more valuable for founders than anybody. Kat Weaver is the CEO of Power to Pitch. She works with entrepreneurs, founders, people that are pitching, helping them with that process. You know, pitching and storytelling is so undervalued by a lot of founders, and attention's never been harder to get, and standing out has never been more important. So doing something a little bit different here. I would give her a full introduction, but since Kat, you are an expert communicator and pitcher, I would love to hear you pitch yourself and introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, that was a really great background that I appreciate. So there's not really too much to add, but I'll just say if I can't get my own introduction wrong, then there's definitely, I should not be in this career path. We've got a lot of other problems. So let's hope I at least get this part right. But I always like to say that I'm a 2-time accidental founder. So I thought I wanted to go into medicine. Half of my family is in medicine, but started my first company out of my college dorm room on accident. Didn't want to wear a bulky fanny pack, so I invented a wearable wrist wallet. Started selling them literally out of my dorm. I had people knocking on the door to say, hey, I want to go tailgate and do all these fun things because it fits small essentials. And it really took off from there. So changed my major to entrepreneurship, lost everything to a fire, and then realized that I had nothing, no mentorship, connection. And the only way that I could get to where I wanted to be, I had my voice and my language. I had nothing else and no handout. So a professor told me to do a pitch competition. I had no experience. I would have rather thrown up and ran away than go speak to people. But I figured, hey, this is my only chance of survival. So I ended up sticking it out, practicing, pitching, and that first check was $7,500 to help me kickstart the company. I thought, someone besides my mom thinks this is a good idea. And I realized that there was a lot more out there. And so I ended up, my claim to fame is that I won 22 of 23 pitches to help fund the company. That was 6 figures in capital to help it grow. Allowed me to do everything from retail, Amazon, even Good Morning America 4 times. So the whole start was that FedEx filmed my top pitch tips on their YouTube. It went viral and I had hundreds of founders DMing me. So I had a side hustle to this main hustle of helping founders pitch, win, raise money, get retail contracts. And so I then decided that that was my passion. My husband looked at me one day and said, you take that inventory and burn it out back. And I said, whoa. I worked on this really hard for 6 years. So actively sold, exited the company, and founded Power to Pitch with the whole mission of helping founders get funded faster.
Wow, that was a fantastic story. One of my first questions was going to be kind of, when did you know you had it, right? Or like, was this a natural talent? Did you really work? But it sounds like one of the first pitch competition you entered was just like you won, and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this, and just rattle off 21 more.
I have some people tell me all the time, and I kind of get offended because they're like, oh, you're just naturally good at that, which is not true, because if you saw the amount of hours that I put into practicing, speaking to mentors, talking with manufacturers, just even repeating that pitch before going in front of people 50 to 100 plus times, to the point that my parents said they'd never want to hear me pitch again because they could repeat it verbatim. So there was so much to figure out in between, because I did not feel comfortable on stage in front of people, having to memorize, not use a note card, talk, walk, answer questions on the spot. It's a learnable skill per se. And I absolutely did not have it it, but I put thousands of hours in essentially to make it happen, which is what I realized, okay, I've got this system that works and I could essentially copy paste and reuse it over and over again.
Yeah, I looked back at my first pitch the other day. It was like a 60-second pitch competition. Not only was my haircut horrible, I was just like, when you're getting in like secondhand embarrassment, you get hot behind the eyes, like, oh my God. I think I got like third or second place or whatever. But I think the point you made about you can be a good communicator, but public presentation, right, and pitching is a whole nother thing. And that comfortability on the stage, you just have to get reps, right? And you can do as much practice as you want, and you should, right, on your own. But I have been, done pitches to, Digital Health Connecticut. It was like an auditorium, massive. And then like, when you're in those big things, it's the lights are beaming in, which kind of adds to everything. And I remember sitting there on the side. I was so prepared. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of this pitch. And I had a suit on with a tie, and I could feel the adrenaline start pumping, and my tie was tied up. It was just like pressing. I could like feel it pulsing in my neck. But yeah, so what are some like just kind of out of the box, like if you've got a couple tips, like I always recommend to people, just videotape yourself pitch. Like if you're just getting started, because to me, you kind of need to inventory, like, what am I not doing right here, right? That's one thing I like. Do you have anything like that, or what are your thoughts?
So the first thing I recommend, and for any of the founders in our fundraising or grant programs, we force them to write out an actual pitch script, because we want to see every word that's projected to essentially come out of your mouth. Because if you're using fluff or filler words, or you don't have a concise formulation about who you are, what you do, and what you need, then you've already lost. It doesn't matter how many hours of practice that you put in to try to string something together, you're going to waste a ton of time. And it should be something that's rehearsed, because as a startup company, you should have the core foundations of what you want to say, because again, it can be copy and pasted in a lot of other aspects and foundations of the business. So always with a pitch script, whether you have, hey, I want to put together a 15-second networking pitch, or 30, 60 seconds. I mean, grants under 200,000, the majority are going to ask for an elevator pitch. So having something written in concrete, I mean, I used the same core one for my first business and video that I made for almost 2 years, because I could just cut out snippets. It was the same foundation of the business, and it's clean and polished, and someone remembers that. So I think it's not just about the recording. That absolutely helps, because it is about reps, but I think it's a script. And also I would tally how much I practice. We can tell if a founder has practiced 10 times 20, 30, 40, 50. I can tell you the range of reps that they've put in to make that happen. And we actually just had a founder. So not only did she get a Shark Tank investment, we helped her win a $20,000 grant and score for the Score Pitch organization. And they said it was the best pitch they've ever seen. And what you don't know is, for someone with that amount of experience, still was texting us, can I use note cards? I'm so nervous. I don't know what to prepare. I don't do this. Like, someone even at that caliber still has to practice and put in the reps, because it's not a supernatural skill to have.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, the filler words is something I struggle with that day to day. And it's something that is very hard to cut out, but you just have to be intentional about it. But the script helps tremendously. I've always thought too, especially when you're pitching with a deck, those transitions are kind of everything, because if you know how you're ending it, like what you're driving towards, right, on a slide, and then when you transition slides, the first, 4, 5, 6 words that need to come out, the whole rest in between is much easier, right? If you're starting at the right point and you're ending at the right point, I've always found that that's a really good, I don't know, if you're thinking about the script, obviously you need to have everything memorized, but like when you end like a slide like differently than you usually do, and you're kind of reaching a little bit, like it's so much harder to get back on track for that next slide and really start it with momentum, right? And start it the right way. Are there,
Can I challenge you on the deck stuff?
Yeah,
so
please.
We have helped plenty of founders raise money without a deck, and we see so many founders rely on it, or create the deck first, or hire a fancy agency to make this pretty deck that's going to change. And we are firm on, again, that pitch script first, because the amount of times that I've seen a deck fail, and if you're going to depend on that, or the screen is hard, the clicker's not working, or you get distracted, or it's lagging, or it's slow, and you rely on that, it's going to be so noticeable. And we had a founder pitching 8 angel investors, and her screen froze the entire time, and no one told her. But because we had coached her through through, you need to pitch as if someone can't see what you're talking about. She ended up getting investment because she could verbalize it so well and help someone who maybe isn't a target consumer of the product still understand what to do with it, how to use it, what her target consumer is, what she really needs. So I would say the deck is tricky to rely on. It can help in terms of transitions and timing, but I've seen more errors happen in relying on it than trying to do without it. So just from experience, a word of caution.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing to me, that take, but like, I totally see what you're saying. I mean, I totally see why she got investment. Like, her screen froze and she had the composure and the practice and the confidence to be able to stand up there and deliver through that. Like, that speaks volumes, right? For her, kind of her grit, metal ability to just like stand and deliver there. I'm just coming from the med tech world. I can't imagine trying to like, describe to someone some type of, stent features or implant, truss geometry and whatever. Like,
you haven't hired me before.
That's right.
I actually see so health tech founders struggle the most in terms of writing out this script and communication because they want to get so technical so fast. Because you can still get an investor from someone maybe not in that particular industry, but maybe you want an investor who has experience in terms of distribution or supply chain or technology, and that investor still has to get some semblance of what you do without having that industry knowledge or really having to know what that industry jargon even is as well. So I would challenge you on that because we have helped plenty of health tech founders do that because it's really hard. You're so close to the business. So it helps to have some external parties poke holes in something like that, which is why, again, we love looking at the language behind it because every word counts.
Yeah, that's a great point. Are there any like, pillars or principles or whatever you want to call them where you're like, hey, everything comes back to like these three things or this handful of things, or kind of how would you describe your philosophy, to pitching, to presenting that you employ with the people that you're coaching?
So I hope I'm going to answer this correctly, and tell me if you don't like this answer, it doesn't match what you're looking for. But for our investor specific program, we screen every single founder because technically they're a reflection of us. We're making investor intros. So we only take about 10% of those who apply. And in this screening process, we look for 4 qualities. And if this founder does not match all 4 of these qualities, then it doesn't matter how much you're going to pay us. We're not going to be a fit to work together. We're going to hate each other and you're looking for a quick fix, and that's not what fundraising really is. So the 4 qualities are: 1 is coachability, 2 is transparency, 3 is grit, and 4 is passion. And so we want a founder to be able to let us challenge them. They need to be open and transparent with us about their struggles and processes. They have to be gritty because fundraising is really, really tough, and it is not for everyone in every type of business. And then if they're not excited about what they're doing, how can they expect us or investors to be excited about what they're doing? So those are the 4 pillars that the business is really built around.
Just preach, honestly. I knew you were going to say coachability first because in founders, that is the biggest thing, right? Like, you have to be coachable. I like the transparency. I was not expecting that one, but it's really, really good because like that transparency goes a long way, almost like vulnerability, right? Like, hey, you got to work with us. We got to understand the warts so we can like really move forward here and understand like kind of how to shore up the flank, if you will, right? That was just golden. I love that. So those 4 great qualities, what are the qualities that, and you kind of touched on these a little bit, right? The inverse of those, but are there any things, any traits, any qualities that stand out as like, if you've got this, if you're doing this, you have to fix this, you're going nowhere. Biggest mistakes, if you will.
I mean, we could be here all day for biggest mistakes. I'm reviewing thousands of founders and deals all the time, which is fun. But so I'm going to give you a hot take kind of on the transparency side. So we'll have some founders approach us and say they're interested in fundraising and they want to go through the program, but in order to talk to them, we need to sign an NDA. And we respectfully refuse because 1, I'm not in that line of business to steal what you're doing. 2, I don't have the time. 3, I understand that you might not trust or understand that. But 4, no investor is going to sign an NDA just to get into an initial conversation. You don't have to share anything proprietary. You don't have to show me your full financials. We can get to a place where I'm happy to sign an NDA, but to be able to just have a conversation with you about the high level pieces, you're stopping a conversation before it starts. You're not getting your idea out there, which is the point in getting connections and building a network. So I think so many founders stunt themselves in thinking, oh, I have this idea and I don't want anyone to steal it and all these things. But at the end of the day, ideas are abundant, but execution is very limited in terms of, things happening at the end of the day. So the execution piece is really what matters, and why I say that it's a turnoff to approach investors and people with that NDA initially.
I couldn't agree more. I honestly, it annoys me whenever people reach out and they want some mentorship, some guidance, and then they ask me to sign an NDA. And it's like, look, I'm trying to take time out of my day. I am not going to steal and run off with your idea. I don't think I've ever heard about that even happening, right? Like, it's just this kind of, oh, my idea is so brilliant that, this person, like you said, not in that line of work, is just going to drop everything they're doing and then go commit all this money and time and energy into this thing. That's really interesting. So to that point, you were talking about execution being the most important thing. I feel like innovation has continued, but we are getting to a place where it is much, much more rare that what you're doing is absolutely, truly unique, greenfield. No one's doing it anything like that. And also with how fast no code and the ability to create software, especially if you're doing something in digital space, you will have someone on your heels quickly. It's never been easier to build something to compete with someone, right? So I was just talking to someone about this the other day. I feel like the execution and the how you're doing it, right? How you're communicating, how you're developing an audience, how you're nurturing a community, how it feels to your audience, right? What is your user experience? What are you offering them beyond just a product, right? Are you offering them tools? Are you offering them things? I feel like all of that, the people that execute on that stuff well are going to win the day, because like anybody can come up with an idea. Like you said, it's all about execution.
I'll give you one hot take on the negatives that a founder does, because you had said this phrase, when a founder goes, oh, there's no one like us. And that is such a red flag, because it makes the investor or that person want to prove that something is similar out there. One. Two, if any founder can say that, why bother? Best in class, revolutionary, disruptive, holistic, sustainable. All of those can mean so many different things that it actually opens up a big can of worms. So it might sound exciting and visionary and like you're giving a pitch as Steve Jobs, Apple-centric, but if you don't have the specifics about what you do, it's only going to cause more confusion. And I give this example. I went to this pitch and these founders, 7 founders, were pitching this huge group of investors on stage. Every single one was a different industry and a different stage, asking for different things. But every single one of them used, there's no one out there like us doing it. We're so unique. We're so disruptive and all these things. And I sat there laughing to myself like, okay, if all 7 of you are revolutionary and disruptive, then what does this mean? Like, I'm just numb to that word and some of those phrases. So we have a whole list to avoid, but that's a huge thing that is a turnoff for founders who are like, oh, no, we're unique. I want to keep that word in the pitch. And I would challenge them by saying, what makes you unique? Yeah. Why should I care? What are the specific elements that are really proprietary to you that I want you to spell it out and replace it? Make me feel that you're unique without having to tell me you're unique.
Yeah, like the hyperbole usually just never does anything that great, other than just kind of like people just eye roll and they're like, okay, you're the coolest thing since sliced bread. Talking about investors there, I feel like the checks get inked, the money gets cashed, right, in the Q&A a lot of the times. Is that something that you focus on with your coaching with founders?
Absolutely. So we had a founder, actually, she had such a good rehearsed pitch, and she admitted this the other day that she had the best pitch, and then during Q&A she bombed, and she then noticeably was the worst person up there. And so that's something we totally work on. We have a whole list in our investor program that these are potential questions, practice your answer. And when we go and take these founders through a mock investor call, we ask these questions. If they answer it poorly, we say, we want it, if you were to have a written answer to this, and practice it being short, concise, with the details, and you're actually directly answering the question, what would you say? What would that sound and look like? And so we'll even ask for written responses to that, because we'll end up usually getting to poke holes in that. And if it's something really important about a competitive advantage, or maybe certain financials, or your IP or legal, some of the basic ones, then that's something that you really got to be prepared to answer, and Q&A can absolutely make or break an investment.
No, totally. I mean, there is just so much strategy to it too, like kind of identifying, sometimes almost the saboteur in the room, where it's like, you need to be answering concisely and firmly, because if you give this person a window and you're like, well, you said this about the patent, but like the PCTs don't work like that. It really works like this, because you just didn't have a polished answer, that's eating up so much more time that you could be talking about, right, your message and getting that across to some other investors and then letting them ask questions. I think founders are typically extroverts and they want to explain and they want to overshare almost. There's just this urge, but you really have to fight that, right? And you have to be like, okay, I got the sound bite. It answers the question. And if they ask something where it's like, there's no way I can really fully explain this in 30 seconds or whatever, then just give what you can and say, there's a deeper answer to this. I'd love to dive into it later, but I want to make sure we have time for some more questions as well. I personally think that that's a fine answer. Don't just say that out of the gate, be like, not going to try to answer that because it's too big. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like I see that happen a lot where founders are like a minute and a half into an answer and then they're like, oh no, I can't even finish this, but I know I've eaten up too much time.
Well, two perspectives here. Sometimes we see founders overshare so deeply and then the investor goes, okay, so I'm going to ask that again. And the founder has spent all this time oversharing the wrong details. And so you shouldn't be taking more than 30 seconds to answer something directly. It's a sign of professionalism. And they really aren't looking for something drawn out. And if they want more details, they'll ask. And I would say, two, to answering questions is if you're unsure of an answer, it is totally okay and so professional to say, I would love to get you that answer after this. I don't have the direct numbers, figures, or answer for you, but if we can share contact information offline, I'd be happy to send and follow up with you on that. You know what? That's a great question, and I'm prepared to get it to you, but I don't want to embarrass myself right now by making a guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very self-aware, right? It's self-aware and a form of confidence to be able to say, hey, I don't know the answer right now, but I'll get it to you. To your points about the 4 things that you look in clients that you work with, I feel like that basically pattern matches what investors want to see. But then all of those things require self-awareness, right? To be transparent, to have grit, to be coachable. So yeah, I totally agree. All right, we're going to switch it up. We've never done anything like this before, but I thought it'd be fun. I want to give my elevator pitch for Exo MedTech and then have you roast me, okay? And I want you to be as brutal as you need to be, okay? I can take it, but you good with that, Kat?
I would love nothing more, and I swear I don't bite, so I'm prepared. I've got notes ready.
Okay.
Do you want me to time you? Do you have is this, how long you usually do this for?
Yeah, I mean, give me the buzzer. It should be short. I'll keep it under 60 for sure. We've got a stopwatch right here on the screen, though. Yeah, you got it? Okay.
All right. Ready when you are.
Okay. Hey there, I'm Spencer Jones, founder at Exo MedTech. I'm a nurse turned entrepreneur, and what we're building at Exo is the best in-class community plus network for medtech innovators. Mentoring and advising startups for the past 10 years, I've seen a lot of pain points, but 2 stuck out. 1, your network was basically based on luck or geography. Do you live in a hub and did you bump into the right people at a conference? 2, there was no place for great training online. Founders ask a lot of the same questions. They need resources that they can access digitally first. And so that's what we built with Exo MedTech. It is a growing community and platform online for medtech innovators, workshops, tools, downloads, bespoke content, 45 lessons covering all the key topics you want. I'd love to get you in the community. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out. Oh, that was so bad. Okay.
No, what are you talking about? 55 seconds.
Okay.
I hear way worse.
That was so bad. Seriously, I can roast myself. I know what I did badly, but go ahead. I'll let you start.
So one more hot take is an opportunity to pitch is never one wasted, ever.
Agreed.
No matter how bad or embarrassed you feel or you think it was awful or whatever it was, never, ever, ever. You never know who's in the room. You never know you can get an introduction to. Before I roast your pitch, I'm going to just give you one example about this because there was a founder who was pitching for $5,000, didn't win, and someone in the audience came up to her after and said, I thought you deserved to win, so I'm going to write you the check for $5,000.
Oh my gosh.
So stuff like that happens. That is a real story, and I just want to say that you just never know. So putting yourself out there is intimidating and practicing, so give yourself a little bit more credit because
no, for sure. Well, reps matter. We always say that at Exo. Reps matter, right? So go ahead. One of the first things that stood out.
I'd say I love that you introduced your background. You brought some validation to you building this and why you might have some experience and care in it. So it's a huge green flag, I would say, that you started with that because that automatically hooks me in as this guy experienced it and really knows. And that's something unique to the business is anyone could go start that, but you lived that and you have that kind of network. I would say you gotta replace best in class.
As soon as I said
I know, I was like, he knows.
You saw me wince. I was like, best in class.
Ugh. Yeah, it's a dagger to my heart. So Best in class, you already know, which makes me happy that you already know that because, again, if anyone can say best in class, it's not worth using.
Right.
I want to know the size of the problem or facts. You said students or need this or this or this, and you're forcing that agenda on me, but do I really know how big of a problem it is? Or are there studies or sources of not only the size of, the average student needs this, or the average student doesn't get this, or make this, or have these connections, or if they don't get X, Y, and Z, they're X less likely to pursue a career in whatever it might be.
It's such a good point. Like, I didn't ground the problem in like any metrics or context. It was just like, this didn't exist, but it was like, but why was that a problem? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
when you do that too, in terms of a problem, it helps someone kind of get an idea of what the competitive landscape is and what's lacking. So you kind of get to kill two birds with one stone. So I always, in every short pitch, stats and facts are huge.
I also didn't touch on competitors. Like, I could, say like there's really expensive this, and then there's a biodesign text. Like, I didn't touch on like what exists currently, right?
Because it's such a short pitch, generalize and quantify whenever you can. So the X amount of competitors or the X resources, the average cost, when you can summarize and quantify in that instance, it's going to be more powerful and it incites questions when you're done speaking. And then you said we offer great training. Ugh. What is great? I want to know what's great, what length of time, and also how you make money. I don't know what your business model is, how you charge, and I would say that that's an important piece. And then what traction do you have? Users, signups, beta, whatever it might be, showcasing a little bit of where you're at. Because are you early or are you doing over $10 million a year? Have you been featured in something? Like, I want to know some validity behind that.
Yeah.
And your ending, I think the ending was fine, but adding a little bit of meat around those sections would make it really powerful.
Yeah. I would give myself like a C- probably on that. Like, and it's funny because, we've never raised money at XO.
Which is great. But, that's nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah, for sure. Which I actually have a whole theory about, like, you're always pitching even if you don't need to raise money. And I think it's, you're seeing a lot more startups bootstrap nowadays. But aside from that, like, we haven't raised money. So some of the things that you're talking about, like, I completely left out because it's like, I haven't tried to sell really like the business model as much or talk about metrics and stuff like that. But it's such a good point. I'm literally going to go back, Kat, and like take some notes on this because that was such good feedback. So, okay. Anything else you want to roast me on?
No, I appreciate you having the guts to pitch because it's really difficult and people don't realize how intimidating it is and they think I'm going to bite their head off when I hear a bad pitch, but I swear I'm here to help. Yeah. So,
you know what's crazy? I mean, we're like already doing this podcast. As soon as you're like, okay, on you, you're ready. I could feel it like start to like, okay, like breathing's getting deeper, heart's bumping a little bit more. It's just crazy. It's just like, but you get used to it, right? It subsides. And the other thing too, it's like, I haven't practiced my XO elevator pitch all that much. So like my back of my brain knowing that, I'm like, ugh, like I was a little bit more nervous. So, okay. So we are in a virtual world now, especially post-COVID. We're pitching all the time on Zoom. I actually hate Teams, Zooms or Google Hangouts, Google Meets, whatever. Same. So like, is there anything about the transition to predominantly virtual pitches that you think has kind of changed your approach or strategy?
I would say it's more difficult to read body language because if you are thinking about your tonality, motion, your energy, all that is contagious and it doesn't come across as much in a Zoom meeting. I'm European, I talk with my hands, I'm very energetic and I'm like try to bring this emotion and elicit that out to make people feel that excitement that I have for what I'm doing. And it's so much more difficult to do that virtually, I would say. And also for founders, you don't know if an investor is scrolling on their laptop, if they're on their phone, like that's something that you can't really determine too much of how much attention is lost. So I think it's definitely more difficult. It makes meetings more accessible, less excuses in terms of travel and things like that, but it's definitely got its cons. And I think the energy portion and the body language is a huge factor in having to get used to that notion.
No, that's so true. I mean, I love in-person pitching. Like there's so much more opportunity to get like points on the board, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there's usually step before, there's after, the whole body language thing too. And it's easy for anybody to look presentable and whatever from here up, but like you really just don't get the full picture of people or how they feel about what you said, the emotional response that it gave them. I frankly hate when people get on meetings these days and don't turn their camera camera on. Like, it's a big
Yeah.
pet peeve of mine because it's like, dude, this is the least you could do, right? Like, it's just, it annoys me. And I get it. Everybody's got their own things going on at different points in time. But like, when you get on calls and it's like 8 people are all no camera on, it's like, guys, okay, like, this is frustrating. So kind of same train of thought here. We've all been on Zoom calls or whatever where you're like, this person's literally, I'm just looking up their nostrils, or like you can't see their face at all. It looks like one of those like 60 minutes interviews with like just a completely blacked out because they're in witness protection. So like, how are there any kind of like must-haves, or how do you think about kind of the production of your home office, or kind of where you're taking most of your Zoom calls?
I would say you want to think about it in terms of somewhat professional. So the reason we do mock investor calls with our founders is we had one founder one time, she was pitching with 2 garbage cans right behind her in a ripped shirt and the doors flinging open. We're like, you seriously expect people to not be distracted by that and take you seriously? And then another woman was pitching, it looked like her childhood bedroom. The bed's messy, the closet's half open, there's writing on the wall. Like, what's going on? It should be clean. It should be, you want to think about, and I don't know why I have to say this to some people, but hair brushed to some sort, looking like you didn't just wake up. If you have a branded t-shirt or hat, that's fine, but something just clean, solid colors are always best. The background, you should not have much behind you to distract you. Usually, like, I have a good plant behind me usually, but
yeah,
a founder should at least have it be clean, simple, minimal distractions, so the focus is actually on you and what you're saying, so there's no extra opportunity for them to look elsewhere.
Yeah, totally agree. The garbage can, 2 garbage cans.
2.
That
We're
was
like, she's
funny
pranking us in a ripped shirt. We're like, we're being pranked right now, aren't we?
I feel like, but in my head, I'm like, why 2? Why was there 2 in the room, right? But yeah. So no, but it's really great points. Like, there's a video I have to send you, and I forget the guy's name. Like, we can put it in the show notes, but he like kind of goes through like each different clip, and it's like a 60-second video, but like each 10 seconds or 5 seconds, he like adds another element, right? Starting with like a horrible kind of Zoom backdrop, you know, like horrible look here, and then he just like one thing after another, and it just completely transforms, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I would be so much more likely to buy a service from him or invest in him, right? If all those things were the case. You know, I personally think if you do enough of these, like having a key light is really good. And, you know, for those that don't know, it's kind of just like a panel light that's like not like a one bulb, but those are really good. Like, they've got some pretty cheap like aftermarket cameras as well, like especially if you use external monitors. I always recommend that. And if I like this mic, I just had it because I used to do music stuff back in the day.
I was gonna say, that's like pretty hefty equipment there.
You know, I had it like sitting in my closet, and I was like, man, I just need to get a little boom arm, and I can just use this. But I like it. You know, like AirPods work great, headphones work great, you know, whatever. Those are like, honestly, you can do all of that for probably like under $200 these days, you know, but those are the things that I recommend. Okay. So I've seen a lot of founders, you know, the problem, solution, yada, 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 yada. There's a really repeatable process, you know, that investors want to see. And sometimes investors like demand it. But I have seen some founders that kind of cut against the grain and kind of did their own version of that, or took things in a different flow or a different pattern. I really don't know if I have strong feelings one way or the other. I think it's all about execution. But like, do you have any thoughts on like, this is exactly what your deck flow should be like? Or do you think it changes based on the founder or what they're pitching?
The deck or a script?
I'd say script, but like script and deck to me are like almost...
So they should match.
We'll go script first.
Well, so they should match. And
Yeah.
we say that there shouldn't be extra information on your deck that you're not speaking to, because someone's reading that and they're distracted and they're not listening to you communicate the business. So I would say we have a concrete starting and ending point we require. We will not review outside of it. It is story and problem, stat, solution. In between can change. We have a few other details that are really important. And then financials, team, ask. Everything else can change. But if you're not leading with your story and your why, and you're giving me all these stats and you're word vomiting at me, and then you're telling how impressive your team is and I don't even know what the heck you're building, I personally don't resonate with that. I don't recommend it. So our founders have an outline and examples of what's raised millions of dollars in terms of story cadence and execution and materials, but it can definitely be a mix. But I think the story and problem should really go hand in hand. And then you have your backup, and then what I'm building should happen pretty quickly.
I totally agree. We had a pitch roast event in EXO the other day, and we had 2 people pitch, and I kind of like put my like, I don't know, trying to be funny, but also give just like good feedback, but a little bit aggressive. But that was like, for both of them, I was like, you've got to hook me with the story. Like, you've got to start with something that tells me why you care about it, why I should care about it, right? But I love how you thought about that. We're like, the middle ground, you can play around with that, and what it needs to look like can be whatever, but the starting point and the ending point need to be just like this. I really, honestly, I agree with that. But the biggest thing I loved what you said was just starting and focusing on the story. There's a saying, it's like people, learn in stories, and, that
They
kind of thing.
remember and repeat in story too.
Yes, yes. It's so true. And I feel like, especially with medtech founders, it being so technical, they can be really excited to get to the technical elements of it and skip over the problem. But definitely sometimes they skip over the story. And that's the most powerful thing. That's what gets people excited. It's like whenever I was raising for Linnaeus Medical, I was a nurse that created a vascular access product because I watched a patient like pull out her central line, right? Like I used to tell that at the very beginning, before I even told you what I was doing, the device, the whatever, I'd say, I'm a nurse when I was at the bedside, and I would tell this kind of gruesome story about me watching a patient with dementia rip her IV out, and she had no idea what she was doing. And I knew there had to be a better way, right? So I would like hook people with that immediately. I think storytelling is not only one of the most powerful skills for a person to have, but one of the best ways that you can increase your chances of getting funded, right?
Totally.
So we're kind of getting towards the end here. Is there anything that we hadn't talked about that you wanted to bring up? Any hot takes you have, spicy perspectives, anything like that?
I'd say that the final hot take I'll give is it's so trendy right now to raise venture capital, when in reality, only 1% of small businesses in the US raise venture capital. And out of that 1%, 1.9% of that 1%, it goes to female founders, and 0.13% goes to minority founders. So the odds are not in a founder's favor. It is very trendy. It is very difficult, but there are plenty of options, non-dilutive grants, things to get started, especially if you're at the idea stages, both government and non, both for-profit and non-profit. There are a lot of options. The whole reason I founded Power to Pitch. So we have 2 programs to support founders with that at our website, powertopitch.com. I would say don't get caught up in these other founders' journeys when you see this Forbes or TechCrunch article. It's all smoke and mirrors. It is not what it's cracked up to be. So really think about the strategic things that you need for the business, and don't give equity away like it's candy. It is a forever chunk of your company, so guard it with your life.
I love that. Honestly, you hear this term, the venture capital hamster wheel, and I really like that, but I feel like people like don't fully understand what I mean sometimes when I say it too, which is like they have an ROI that they need to hit, right? Which means you have to get to this certain revenue. So like there is a world where you build an incredible business, but maybe it's only doing, 6 million in revenue, but that's your target, that's your goal, and it's spinning off cash and it's very profitable for you and you live an amazing life, but that's like never going to be suitable, right, for a venture capital investor. So you're kind of constantly getting pushed and stressed, right, in this high stressed, high growth over everything mode. And it's just like probably not what a lot of founders want to do. But I have seen, honestly, Kat, like a lot more, people I follow online and kind of in that like venture influencer type world almost, where they're like, we're seeing more people bootstrap than ever. We're recommending people do that as much as they can, because that pendulum swung a bit to where it was like investor friendly these days, and they're asking for a lot, and it's just like, what, if you don't have to, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you said, it's kind of smoke and mirrors, and like, you don't have to be a unicorn to be a successful entrepreneur and to like provide an incredible life for you, your family, your team, and really make a positive impact, right? And we do need to see more equity in venture investing for sure, but I love your approach of like, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to grow, wonderful, successful business. It's not to like raise the biggest Series B round you can imagine, right? So we'll end with this. I want to make sure anything that's inspiring you, any books that you've read, any tools that you've been using that you just are raving about, like anything kind of parting here, to give away to the audience.
2 books recently that I've actually read multiple times. So I recently have even reread them. Traction by Gino Wickman. 90-day goals, quarterly goals, team vision, all that super, super important. And then the second one is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. So I get a lot of requests from founders and can I pick your brain and can I do these things? And I always felt so much guilt. And then I found that I was doing 10 Zooms a day and it was so unhealthy. There was still ways that I can help them and figure out how to literally buy back my time. And so that mentality and those lessons have been life-changing. So I highly recommend those 2 books.
Those are great. So ditto on the the endorsement for traction. I looked over my shoulder because I've got it on like my bookcase over here. It's fantastic. The buy back your time though, I have to read that. I have fallen victim to that. I'll call it either traffic jam or crosswalk days. That's all I have now, where my schedule is just like 30 minutes, and they're just a little bits of gap. That's the crosswalks, and then the traffic jams are as what you think they are. So I've got to read that. I know it's going to be a good one. So, well, Kat, this has been so fun. Honestly, it was something different than what we usually do, but it is clear why you've had the success you have. Your communication skills are excellent. I appreciate the feedback that you gave me, but also kind of the wisdom that you brought to the pod for the audience. So can't say enough. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to put Kat's info, how to reach her, power to pitch, all of that stuff in the show notes below. But Kat, I hope the audience, listening to this reaches out, because I feel compelled after this to practice my pitching, and I know someone like you could help me. So yeah, thanks for being on the pod.
I feel so honored that you said that. And clear communication has changed my life. It's changed so many other founders' lives that we support. So, which is why I'm so passionate about it and made it now my life's work. So I'm very active on LinkedIn at Kat Weaver. If you want to link that, I share daily pitch tips and founder resources. So I really appreciate you having me, and it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.